So I'll just get right into it. There is only one way that I look at it that Sony can ever pull itself out of the gutter of making these god awful, horrible comic movies that don't feature Spider Man but have all of his supporting cast and his villains that are just garbage. And that is to stop with the PG-13 crap and just pull the trigger, proverbially, and start making them R rated. They will be able to corner the market so much better. Imagine if Craven the Hunter, which comes out, I believe, sometime this year, is rated R. Not PG 13, but just go ahead, pull the trigger, and make it rated R. Make Craven the Hunter what he was really intended to be, a bloodthirsty killer that is an experienced hunter, and also he has superhuman strength and reflexes. Imagine if they were to change course and again just nut up and make Venom one of the scariest supervillains in Spider-Man lore, second only to the Green Goblin. And you make it rated R. And this dude goes around eating people's brains. So imagine Venom not being this comic goofball, but an actual serious threat. And you give him his own rated R movie. You market it towards people who like action, they like violence. You have the villain. You're telling the story from the villain's perspective. There, think about it like this. There's a reason why Deadpool for so many years was so popular. Even now with Deadpool 3 coming out, which I don't really think is really going to be shit, but there's still some excitement for Deadpool 3. And that's because they're faithful to Deadpool. They don't make Deadpool suitable for children. They don't Deadpool is cringe, but he's a funny kind of cringe. But they don't tamp down Deadpool. They don't water him down. Deadpool in the movies is essentially Deadpool in the comics, and they are one and the same. Whereas with Venom, Venom was kind of a goofball in the comic books, but he was a villain. And he knew when to tamp up tamp up. He knew when to ramp up his antisocial tendencies. And then he knew when to be comical. But for the most part, Deadpool was, again, he was a cold-blooded killer. A lot of Spider-Man villains, because I grew up mainly reading Spider-Man. A lot of Spider-Man villains, a lot of them for the most part, they would murk you and not really give it a second thought. I mean, even the most silliest of ones, even the most silliest of his villains would just smoke you and not even really lose a ounce of sleep over it. And if Sony wants to beat out Marvel, if Sony wants to beat out its competition, Disney, Marvel, and the like, they're going to have to do something different other than these goofy ass PG-13 movies. Honestly, the only one that actually was even moderately successful in the last 10 years was the first Venom. Um, They have to do something different. Upping the rating from PG-13 would go a long way in ensuring that they are the ones that are cornering the market in superhero movies, especially if you're not going to have the main character, Spider-Man, featured in your films. It only makes sense. Do something that puts the butts in the seats, that puts asses in seats, and has them watching it, and it's good old fashioned blood and gore. It's having these villains who were always intended to be villains. They were always intended to either, if not be villains, then be anti-heroes, and have them do what they do best. Killing a whole bunch of people, not really giving a shit, and looking badass doing it and making it look cool. I don't understand for the life of me, even in the DCEU, they don't ever really, with the exception of the Suicide Squad, they don't ever really just go ahead and bite the bullet and do it and just, kind of just hold their nose and just realize, hey, it may not be something that you want to take your kids to, but this is what people want to see. And truth be told, I honestly think my hypothesis for why they do this is they see the name comic book and they think, oh, it's comic, and so it's comical, it's supposed to be funny. Comics were very rarely and are very rarely comical. I mean, now they are. Now the industry in and of itself is a joke, uh, but comics were never really intended to be jokey and being funny all the damn time. They had their funny moments, but they were intended to be serious. The reason why they were called comics was because they all started out in the serials in the newspaper, and that's why the term comic stuck with them. But comic books were always meant to be serious. The tone was always meant to be serious. Yeah, they would be in absurd situations, but honestly, the people within the story took what was happening serious, and it was always meant to be taken seriously. You got the MCU now. The MCU is nothing more than really a comedy show, and it's a bad comedy show. The jokes are not even funny. 9 times out of 10, the jokes do not land, and it's just hard to watch. It's impossible to watch. To really be honest with you, I think the last Marvel movie I watched was Black Widow. And after hoping to actually see Taskmaster, one of the most dangerous, deadliest killers within Marvel Comics, to see him to be reduced to what he was. Well, it really wasn't a him to begin with, but to see what that character was reduced to in that movie, I just decided after Black Widow that I was not going to really dedicate any significant portion of my time to watching another Marvel movie, because that was just an injustice. And no pun intended towards the game, but it was just an injustice. It was just a travesty what they did to that character. And I would never really just dedicate any of my resources to watching another Marvel movie. It was just horrible. And I mean, even they could even remain woke if they so wanted to. But if they ramped up the ultra violence, they would probably, they would probably somewhat get away with it. But it's just this generic, goofy, just constantly joking, nonsensical bullshit. And nobody can take it seriously. And those are my thoughts about Sony and somewhat of MCU and what they could do to do better. Have a good one.